In Ecuador, after pressure from the indigenous movement, several officials of Guillermo Lazo's government resigned to their post. The 43rd Summit of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, concludes its Suriname with a focus on trade and cooperation. Former Secretary General of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, Engineer Mohammad Barkindo, died on Wednesday in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Ecuador, after pressure from the indigenous movement, several officials of Guillermo Lazo's government resigned to their posts. At least 4 members of Lazo's cabinet, among them the Minister of Economy, Simon Cueva, presented their resignation after receiving serious accusations during the national strike. The same was received and accepted by the Ecuadorian president, who expressed his gratitude for the loyal and valuable services given to the outgoing authorities in the exercise of their functions. Meanwhile, President Lazo is expected to announce ministerial and institutional changes in his cabinet as a result of the demands of demonstrators in the recent national strike. Also in Ecuador, the Episcopal Conference announces the first meeting of the technical roundtable between the government and the social and indigenous organizations that participated in the national strike. The indigenous movements and the national government will meet on Thursday, July 7th to follow up on the agreements and resolve the pending issues from the national strike that took place between June 13th and 30th. The meeting will define the work methodology, the issues to be addressed, and the roadmap for the dialogue established to address the main demands of the people. In this respect, the Episcopal Conference affirmed that it hopes that the talks will contribute to the construction of a national fraternity. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, acknowledged during the celebration for the 211th anniversary of the signing of the Act of Independence the role of the civil-military union in defense of national sovereignty. The celebration event for another anniversary of the signing of the Act of the Declaration of Independence and the Day of the Bolivarian National Armed Force began on Tuesday with the raising of the national flag at the National Pantheon Monumental Complex and a tribute to the father of the nation, Simón Bolívar. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro recognized in a speech the spirit of courage of the Bolivarian National Armed Forces and the Civic Military Union in the defense of the country's sovereignty. The president also emphasized that the values of the armed forces are based on the ideology of the liberator Simón Bolívar.
The Bolivarian National Armed Force, today, as never before, united in values and ideals, and in the historical project of the liberator Simón Bolívar, the project of Republican reconstruction that our beloved Supreme Commander Hugo Rafael Chávez Frías rescued and brought for this and future generations.
In Bolivia, authorities laid a wreath in front of the statue of the liberator Simón Bolívar in La Paz to mark the 211th anniversary of the declaration of Venezuela's independence. The solemn event was attended by officials from Bolivia and Venezuela, including the Minister of the Bolivian Presidency, Maria Nela Prada, and the Venezuelan Ambassador, Cesar Trompis. During the ceremony, the officials emphasized the historical role of the liberator Simón Bolívar, as well as the revolutionary processes undertaken by Venezuela. At the same time, the authorities praised the bonds of brotherhood that unite Bolivia and Venezuela. Through its official Twitter account, the Venezuelan embassy in Dominica announced that ambassadors from China, Cuba, and Dominica joined Bolivarian Ambassador José Durabio Moros in the commemoration of the 211th anniversary of the independence of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. In the same line, the ambassador of Dominica to Venezuela and Alba TCP National Coordinator, His Excellency Ambrose George, congratulated the Venezuelan people and their leaders for having succeeded in defending Venezuela's independence and sovereignty throughout 211 years. Colombia's President-elect Gustavo Petro will ask the ELN guerrillas and all armed groups in the country for a bilateral ceasefire. Petro, in an interview with W Radio, launched a message that the time for peace has come. In addition, he called for the beginning of judicial negotiations in the majority and political negotiations in the minority to achieve the end of the war in Colombia. Since Petro won the elections last June 19th, the ELN has reiterated in separate statements its willingness to resume the peace negotiations that began with former President Juan Manuel Santos in 2017 in Quito and were taken in 2018 in Havana. We are taking a short break. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. The 43rd Summit of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, concluded Tuesday in Suriname with a focus on trade and cooperation. During the meeting, the member countries discussed the progress of the agricultural system agenda, climate financing and security issues. Other issues discussed were the update of COVID-19 protocols and other health emergencies. The Caribbean heads of state agreed to take decisions on the elimination of non-tariff barriers on agricultural products in order to ensure food security in the region.
Welcome.
During the press conference held at the end of the summit, Suriname's President Chandrika Persad Santokhi talked, among other things, about CARICOM strategic policy on nutrition and food security.
Our agri-food agenda to enhance our food and nutrition security by 2025 vision, the reduction of the food import bill by 25% by 2025. In that regard, we mandated the Council for Trade and Economic Development to conclude by the end of this month the programs aimed at removal of all non-tariff barriers to intra-regional trade, particularly agriculture goods.
Santokhi also referred to the cooperation relation with Haiti and the need to continue that cooperation on a win-win basis.
During our meeting here, there was a side meeting with a technical team from Haiti and a technical team from Suriname, discussing about strengthening the cooperation, discussing a lot of issues concerning flights, concerning labor, concerning a lot of other issues. And we agreed on the heads level, President and the Prime Minister, that will continue to have that cooperation. And that we as two CARICOM countries, we have to go for a win-win cooperation.
Suriname's Foreign Minister Albert Ramdin stressed the need of all CARICOM members to diversify their economies.
Two things are critical in industrial policy as we see it for the region. One is we will need to diversify our economies. And industrial policy will provide that opportunity because we need to become, up to a certain level, up to a certain degree, independent from production elsewhere. We have seen the consequences in terms of COVID-19 with the vaccines, where we were the last in line to be able to receive some. That marginalization we need to address.
Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves, on the other hand, spoke about the energy issue and the sanctions imposed by the United States on Latin American countries.
There's one obvious one with the supply of energy through the Petro-Carib arrangement, which is very favorable to several countries in the Caribbean, including, and especially so, the independent countries of the OECS, but the other countries within CARICOM. As you are aware, the unilateral sanctions by the United States administration imposed during the time of President Donald J. Trump in relation to Venezuela brought, for all practical purposes, the Petrocaribe arrangement to an end. This arrangement delivered important financing benefits to countries participating.
Gonsalves also referred to the jurisdictions of each member country and that of the bloc in dealing with certain important issues.
Anyone has any issue, you address that within the national jurisdiction. If it touches and concerns the issue of movement of persons and it concerns the treaty itself, well, then you go to the CCJ. And I think it's important that we make distinctions between two different sets of issues, juridically and at the same time to reaffirm that our region is a region which upholds the values in the Charter of Civil Society.
CARICOM Secretary General Dr. Carla Barnett elaborated on the labor categories agreed during the summit and the relations between those categories and each member country's legislation.
One was in relation to the definitions of categories of labor. The reality was that there were just very few issues that needed to be clarified. Those issues were clarified. There's general agreement on the definitions of the categories of labor. Those definitions are in keeping with ILO standard definitions. What needs to be done now, because when we make decisions at the level of CARICOM, at the national level, the laws may need to be amended. For most of the countries, there really isn't any need to amend the laws. It is really just one or two that need to do that, and we will begin that process of working with the countries to make sure that those definitions that we agreed are, in fact, incorporated in the local laws.
More news coming up after our final show break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The Secretary General of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, Engineer Mohammad Barkindo, died on Wednesday in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria. The news was confirmed by Mele Kyari, head of the Nigerian Oil Corporation, who in a tweet mourned the loss of the oil expert. Barkindo, 63 years old, was in the Nigerian capital to participate in the Energy Summit, according to information provided by the presidential office. He had held a meeting minutes before his death with the country's president, Muhammadu Buhari. Barkindo's career began in 1980 in Nigeria, his native country, where he chaired the National Oil Corporation, and from there he went to OPEC. Mohammad Barkindo was at the head of OPEC in a very turbulent period exacerbated by the crisis in Ukraine. In one of his last public interventions, he suggested allowing the trade of Iranian and Venezuelan crude oil to alleviate the shortage.
The size it was in 2018.
On Tuesday, Kenya hosted a meeting of the Intergovernmental Authorities on Development, a 7-country body to discuss peace and security in the region. During the meeting, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said he met Sudan's coup leader Abdel Fattah al-Burhan in Nairobi, and that both committed to dialogue to resolve any differences. Their talks follow a clash in a volatile border region last month, in which Khartoum said that Ethiopian forces had captured and killed Sudanese troops, claims denied by Addis Ababa. Burhan said the IGAD meeting gave them an opportunity to take stock of the response to challenges in the region. The African Union voiced alarm last week over the escalated tensions between Ethiopia and Sudan following the incident in the disputed Al-Fashaka border area. In Russia, the Minister of Industry and Trade, Denis Manturov, stressed the stability and supply of industries despite the Western sanctions. The minister assured that the situation in the goods and consumer market, as well as in raw materials, has stabilized. Manturov detailed that the Russian government took the necessary measures to make imports more flexible, which helped to overcome the first economic shock. Since the end of February, the United States and the European Union have intensified the economic war. Since the beginning of the Russian special military operation in Ukraine, more than 8,400 sanctions against Moscow have been activated, in addition to the 2,695 sanctions already in force since 2014. On Tuesday, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu stated that some of the weapons that the West is sending to Ukraine are spreading across the Middle East and ending up on the black market.
Large-scale arms supplies to Kyiv regime. The country had received more than 28,000 tons of military cargo so far. According to the information at our disposal, some of the foreign weapons supplied by the West to the Ukraine are spreading across the Middle Eastern region and are also ending up on the black market.
The Chinese army carried out military exercises in the East Sea waters with the aim of strengthening its defensive military capabilities and sending a message against Western attempts to affect its interests. The exercise was carried out in China's territorial waters near the Diaoyu Islands, islets anchored in the South China Sea and which are in dispute with Japan. According to the authorities, this exercise seeks to reinforce the defensive capability of the Asian giant to face the growing threats in the international scenario. The government of China on several occasions has shown its willingness to maintain a policy of peace. However, they assure that the exercise is a message to the West's attempts to intervene and destabilize the region. Britain's Chancellor Rishi Sunak resigned from Boris Johnson's cabinet in protest of the Prime Minister's leadership. Sunak is the second senior official in Johnson's cabinet to resign in the last few minutes. Moments earlier, British Health Secretary Sajid Javid tendered his resignation from the Prime Minister's cabinet, citing he can no longer, in good conscience, continue serving in this government. On Twitter, Sunak wrote, "The public rightly expect government to be conducted properly, competently, and seriously. I recognize this may be my last ministerial job, but I believe these standards are worth fighting for, and that is why I am resigning." Javid on another occasion said many lawmakers and the public had lost confidence in Johnson's ability to govern in the national interest. During the day, the Attorney General of the United Kingdom, Alex Chock, also announced his resignation from the post. Through a statement published on his Twitter account, Alex Chock announced his resignation with great sadness, admitting that being in government means accepting to defend difficult or even unpopular political positions. He also assured that the country is at a crucial moment, while he thanked for the opportunity to have served the country as Minister of Justice and Solicitor General. In the United Kingdom also, the Bank of England warns that the global economic outlook has worsened markedly. A rise in commodity prices led to higher inflation around the world, presenting a downside risk over the coming months. The instability of energy and commodity costs creates a considerable risk of disruption that could amplify economic shocks in the future. According to Andrew Bailey, Governor of the Bank of England, developments related to Russia's special military operation in Ukraine are a key aspect that will impact the global outlook. This is part of the Financial Stability Report from the Financial Policy Committee, where officials say that they will conduct annual tests and assess a further rise in interest rates. In Italy, authorities declared a state of emergency in 5 northern regions in response to the historic levels of drought affecting the river Po. The initiative will allow the government to bypass legislative processes and take immediate action, such as implementing the imposition of water rationing for homes and businesses. The decree also pledged initial funds of €36.5 million for the regions of Emilia-Romagna, Friuli-Venezia, Giulia, Lombardy, Piemonte, and Veneto to help them cope with water shortages. The Po is the longest river in Italy and runs for more than 650 kilometers through the north of the country, providing about a third of the country's agricultural production. TeleSUR English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on screen are in place since July 1st. Quite soon, further changes will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now more than ever, the world connects to us and our stories are heard in other faraway nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. We have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.